Many seniors have been told that pressing weight overhead is bad for their shoulders. They've heard it causes impingement, dangerous to the rotator cuff, or will lead to arthritis. But what if I told you that pressing overhead for seniors is not only safe, but one of the best and most important things that they can do to have a strong, healthy body as they age? Let's review some of the most common myths associated with pressing weight overhead, and then get into 5 reasons why seniors should press weight overhead. Myth number 1 is that pressing overhead causes impingement. What that means is that the tendons between the humerus, your arm bone, and the scapula, the coracoid process, and the acromion get squished as the humerus goes up overhead. Now, this sort of thinking is completely misguided and doesn't understand how humans move. As we press our arms up, or as we bring our arms up overhead, what happens is that the humerus actually slides inferiorly down to relieve pressure, and the coracoid process, which is attached to the scapula, the whole scapula goes up as we bring our arms up overhead. A properly performed overhead press is done with a shrug, meaning you're lifting your shoulders at the top of the motion to even further eliminate any sort of potential for impingement. So, can an overhead movement lead to impingement? Yeah, potentially if you have an underlying pathology going on that's actively inflamed. However, if you do the overhead press correctly, for most people, it's not going to create an impingement problem. Myth number 2 is that pressing with dumbbells or a machine is safer than a barbell press. Let's talk about machines first. Machines confine you to a very specific path of motion and prevent any of these stabilizing muscles from functioning as they should, and also really limit core engagement within the body. So they're certainly not an ideal option for somebody looking for an exercise that'll have real world carryover into their life. Now, dumbbell pressing is the next best thing to barbells. However, it does limit the amount of benefit that you can get. Because you're using each hand independently, you're by default not going to be able to press as much weight overhead. When we put a barbell that's connected as one unified system into our hands, we will be able to generate the most amount of force possible with our body. And when we're able to do that, we can lift the most amount of weight possible, create the most amount of stimulus possible, and increase the most amount of strength possible as a senior. So, barbells are ideal, dumbbells would be the next best thing, and machines are an option that I would avoid unless you absolutely have to. Myth number 3 is that pressing overhead places too much unnecessary stress on the spine. This couldn't be more wrong. Pressing overhead does indeed place a stress on the body, on the spine, and I would argue that it's a necessary stress. If we don't expose our bodies to the stress of exercise, they will by default wither and become weaker over time. The body and the spine specifically is meant to withstand stress. And in fact, when we place a stress on our spine that it's able to adapt from, we see an increase in the strength and integrity of the spine. Overhead pressing also, when done properly, activates the muscles of the glutes, the quads, the core, and creates a strong brace that supports and stabilizes the spine. Check out this video here to learn exactly how to do the overhead press properly, and you'll be sure to progress safely over time. Next, let's get into the 5 reasons why seniors should press weight overhead. Number 1 is because it checks all the boxes for shoulder health. When I was in physical therapy school, we learned a bevy of different special tests for the shoulder. Tests for the rotator cuff, tests for impingement, tests for the labrum, all designed to pick up on small variances in shoulder movement and pain. Now, if you can press half or even a quarter of your body weight overhead without pain, I can just about guarantee with 99.9% accuracy that you are going to be negative for every single one of the special tests that I know of. Thus, the overhead press with weight is a great way to ensure that you have healthy shoulders without having to undergo MRIs, X-rays, or a bunch of special tests. Reason number 2 is because the overhead press is a full body strength exercise. When we think about strength training, we want to pick the most effective exercises that are going to allow us to train our body in the most effective way possible in the least amount of time. Thus, we need exercises that use as much muscle as humanly possible. Exercises like the squat and the deadlift are fantastic for the spine and the lower body. An exercise like the overhead press is great for the upper body because it brings into play the abdominal muscles, the deltoid muscles, the triceps, and many other stabilizing muscles to produce an incredible stimulatory effect on the body. If you want more information on whether squats and deadlifts are safe for seniors, check out this playlist right here. Number 3, the overhead press builds real-world functional strength for seniors. Think lifting something into the overhead bin, throwing a grandkid into the air, or reaching up high to get something out of a cupboard. All things that you as a senior want to be able to do for the duration of your lifespan, yet many seniors lose their ability to lift their arms overhead, let alone to lift a great-grandchild overhead. And that's because we don't exercise in a way that stimulates that movement. For some folks that I'll work with, when I have them start overhead pressing, it's the first time they've done something like that in decades. And it's a real shame because if we don't use it, we will lose it. And all it takes is a little bit of practice with this overhead position with some weight to really maintain your functional strength as you age. Studies show that overhead pressing for older adults helps them to maintain their independence and mobility as they age. Number 4 is that it is a fantastic movement for core strength, balance, and coordination. Because it's a standing exercise and you have to stay balanced as you do the movement, it brings into play the muscles and joints of your body all the way down to your toes. Your ankles, your knees, and your hips all have to figure out how to orient themselves in space so that you don't lose your balance. And in going through that process, it will strengthen your balance and make you a more capable, healthy senior. Unlike traditional core exercises done on Bosu balls or balance boards, the overhead press requires dynamic stability with a weight overhead. Thus, research shows the overhead press brings into play the abdominals and other core muscles. Number 5, the overhead press is the best way for seniors to build a strong rotator cuff. 1 in 3 Americans over 60 has a rotator cuff tear. Now, thankfully, over half of them go unnoticed, meaning you can live a fully pain-free, healthy life even with underlying rotator cuff pathology. However, it's still important for us to build a strong rotator cuff. The physical therapy community and other rehab professionals are obsessed with isolated external and internal rotation exercises to strengthen the rotator cuff. It is an external and internal rotator. However, its primary job is to stabilize the glenohumeral joint as it moves through full ranges of motion. Now, as you move your shoulder through an overhead pressing or overhead flexion motion, the rotator cuff muscles will be working like crazy to stabilize that shoulder in the joint. This is their natural job and function, and when you use them in that way, they will get stronger in their natural way. So, is overhead pressing dangerous or unsafe for senior shoulders? Absolutely not. The myths around it are completely unfounded, and the problems with pressing overhead come more from improper technique or poor progression as opposed to the exercise itself. If you follow the steps we lay out in this video to know exactly how to do the overhead press step by step correctly, you'll be sure to safely build shoulder strength that will last for life. The overhead press is the single most useful upper body strength exercise for seniors. Until next time, I'm Dr. Matt, physical therapist. Like and subscribe for more videos just like this.